Bonjour YouTube, welcome back to our channel. Today we take you to
Dourdan.
So,
On y va?
on y va!
Today we take you to Dourdan, a small town in the south of Île-de-France region.
Built on the banks of the river Orge, Dourdan owes its notoriety to its potter's workshop, hence the three pots adorning the city's coat of arms, and a strategic site on the wheat road linking the Beauce and Paris.
This city has played a role in almost all the wars in the history of France.
At the time, Dourdan was on the border of the Kingdom of France. It was just about the size of today's Île-de-France region, hence the name. Then, a fortress was more than necessary.
Unfortunately, we cannot go down because, as you can see, the wall collapsed, and before people used to go down there, and now because of the security reasons we cannot go down. But still, you can still have the view above. Dourdan also owes its fame to its wool stocking factories, whose knitting looms were introduced on the initiative of a young local woman, Marie Pouspin. She effectively modernized the wool industry in the city.
Today, Dourdan is a beautifully preserved town that attracts international and local tourists for its architecture, and we are here to discover it with you.
We start with l'Église Saint-Germain-l'Auxerrois that dominates Dourdan and its surrounding valley.
It predates the neighboring Château, with its construction having started earlier in mid-12th century.
During the Hundred Years' War, the church burned and lost upper parts of its nave in 1428. It was rebuilt and restored, however, suffered again during the Wars of Religion.
Germain-l'Auxerrois was further enlarged in the 17th century with the addition of a larger chapel to the Virgin Mary.
During the French Revolution, the building was looted and closed. It became the Temple of the Victorious Reason, and later served as a prison, but not for long, as in 1795 it was returned to the church at the insistence of the locals.
Major restorations were done in the 19th century to avoid the collapse. They took less than 10 years to complete and added a few elements of a neo-Gothic decorative art that was appropriate at the time. So, something about the desserts that we just had. I tried this, I saw it basically, it's called potato, okay? And I was thinking, my goodness, this reminds me of this Russian dessert that we had as kids. It was my favorite dessert in the whole world when I was a kid. So I got it, and guess what? It was the same. It was the same, except one thing, they've added alcohol in there as well, so there was rum in it. It was so good. Sinan thinks it's too heavy.
Yeah, it's so heavy.
But for me, it's perfect. And because you don't eat a lot of it, you can't. It's really heavy.
That's why it was so tiny.
Yeah. I don't know what it's made of, but the texture is incroyable. It's incredible. And the Russian version is basically you crush the biscuits, you make like a paste out of them. You add cocoa powder, chocolate powder, and then you add concentrated milk, and you mix it all together, and then you freeze it. And then when it comes out like harder, you roll it in the cocoa powder and you eat that. It's incredible. But this one had rum, so yes.
Château de Dourdan is one of the very few buildings of the 13th century that has preserved most of its structure.
Between the end of the 12th and the beginning of the 13th century, the Capétiens, French, and the Plantagenets, English, were at war.
King Philippe Auguste launched an important program of military defense constructions. The role of the Château de Dourdan was to defend the southern part of the royal domain, as well as to protect the trade route from Beauce and Paris.
The exact date of the start of construction of this fortress is unknown. However, a charter of the April 1222 mentions for the first time the existence of a new chateau.
During the Hundred Years' War, the chateau, along with the city itself, were besieged many times. Dourdan was attacked in 1428 by the Anglo-Burgundian troops led by the Count of Salisbury. The population was decimated, and only by 1477, Louis XI reintegrated Dourdan into the royal domain.
By the time of François I, owner of the city, the chateau was offered in 1536 to his favorite Anne de Pisseleu, Duchess of Étampes. This is the same duchess who had the chamber right next to the king at the Château de Fontainebleau. To see it, watch our recent Château de Fontainebleau episode in the first pinned comment of this video.
Following the death of François I in 1547, Anne de Pisseleu lost the Château to Henry II to be sold to François de Guise.
During the Wars of Religion, Dourdan was under the authority of the Duc de Guise. He was the leader of the Catholic party, fighting against the Protestant party. In order to restore his authority, King Henri IV instructed Marshal Biron to seize the Château of Dourdan.
Philippe d'Orléans, brother of Louis XIV, received the chateau in 1672. It was restored, but the apartments remained empty and closed. Philippe d'Orléans then transformed it into a prison. In 1710, the dungeon was reorganized with a fourth floor that divided the guard room into two levels. Iron bar closed all openings, doors with windows and locks were installed.
So now we're inside the dungeon. By the way, on the way inside here, we came across the mayor of Dourdan, who basically said to us, hello, shook our hands, and then asked where we're coming from. So we told him where we're coming from, like in France, where we live. And he was like, oh, welcome. Kind of bizarre, but okay. Anyway, so the dungeon that we're in, it used to be a prison for men. This dungeon used to be much taller. It used to be 55 meters, no, 55 meters, around 35 or 55 meters tall. But then after the fire, it had to be reduced in height, and now it's 25 meters tall. We're gonna go to the top anyway. With the French Revolution, the chateau became a departmental prison. Men and women were separated. The dungeon and the buildings along the north curtain were used as a prison for men, while women occupied the entire south wing, opposite the dungeon. So from this dungeon, you can actually see really well what it means to have a Philippe Auguste chateau. This is his last chateau that he built, and you can see that it's in the shape of a square, with towers around the corners and in the middle. It's around 70 meters in width, and with 3 towers, and so around 20-25 meters in between. So these towers were used by the guards, where they would basically have the archers inside who would shoot at people if they needed to defend the chateau.
Between 1818 and 1819, the departmental prison was transferred to Poissy. A municipal prison and military depot were left at the chateau until 1852.
That same year, the chateau was bought by Amédée Guéné, who saved the old medieval fortress from ruin. Many restoration works were carried out, and Amédée Guéné bequeathed the castle by will in 1863 to his cousins, the Guillot family. From then until 1961, the chateau remained under the ownership of the family.
And apparently it is 18 degrees and it's sunny according to Apple, but it feels like it is 12 degrees, and that's the reason why we just dress like this. I'm not cold, thankfully, but you should never trust Apple recommendations when it comes to weather, it seems.
So we are in the perfect example tower of the wall. In this side, they had the cannon shooters, I guess. Basically, they had the cannons here, and they would shoot from these openings. Each tower had several openings. This one has 3. And this is the genius idea of Philippe Auguste, who basically reinforced the protection of his kingdom.
In 1961, the chateau was sold to the city of Dourdan and was then classified as Monument Historique in 1964. Today, it houses a museum with high-quality collections of the Dourdan heritage, archaeological pottery, prints, paintings, sculptures from 16th to the 20th century. So that's it for today. We hope you liked this episode as much as we did. Please don't forget to like, share and comment below. It helps the channel grow. And until the next one, au revoir.